thank you everybody for coming. Wednesday night meditation. It's always a good time. It's one of my favorite nights of the week, actually. We've been doing this for a long time, so it's really nice. How many of you have never been here before?
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Huh.
All right, great. Well, I'm glad the winds blew you through the door. This is the Meditation Learning Center. I guess you probably know that, otherwise you wouldn't be here. And some of you don't look familiar, so I could introduce myself a little bit. My name is Shane Wilson, and this has been the Meditation Learning Center for almost 19 years now. And it took several years for people to even know that it was a Meditation Learning Center. And just recently we started doing more events in here. I usually put out a little, what I call an invitation, for us to possibly look at, in our meditation practice, something that's a commonality, something that we can all use in our meditation, and something that we can investigate perhaps and make it a little bit more interesting. And it's usually always something to do with the mind or body. Tonight I wanted to kind of put out the idea of feelings, feelings within the body, and how we have these situations come up in our lives. And every experience, every thought, everything that happens, if we really look at it, we see that it rises, it comes out of nothing, and it falls back into nothing. And then the next thing comes up again and again. So we can actually say to ourselves, what is the next experience I'm going to have? Kind of make a game out of it almost, and because these experiences rise and fall. Just like the thoughts, just like the hours and the minutes, the days, the weeks, the lives, rising and falling. And we can't really find where they come from. We can't really find where they fall back to. So, and that is one of the emptiness teachings that we don't really have time for right now. But if we keep in mind that things arise from nothing and fall away into nothing, and that's very, very normal and very healthy and very common for us to. I don't know, is somebody actually using that cushion?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Yeah, feel free.
That's yours.
It was all set up for it. Yeah. And then there's a chair back there too. And then there's other chairs here if the person wants to use those. And that's a kneeling bench. So you can use it if you want. You can try it out. And then with these experiences, with these different things that occur in our life, if they rise and fall, that's very normal. I mean, it happens all the time. But from time to time, and sometimes more frequently than we would like, things they'll rise into our experience and then get stuck. And that stickiness is usually what we refer to as when we start to become conditioned, in life. From these things that get stuck within us, it kind of form our personality. They kind of form who we are. And it can happen again and again. It can happen every day. Sometimes it might happen more for one person than another. But there are things that get suppressed within the body and within the mind too. But primarily, we're talking about the body. And so, if, for example, I'm a small child and my parents forget to pick me up at the store or whatever, and I start, if I'm small enough, I start to cry and I start to, get scared and wander, walk around looking for my parents or looking for somebody to help me, And so the result is that there's a feeling of abandonment, and that can be carried through, for a young person's entire life, that feeling of abandonment. And so that's an example of some of these things that can get stuck stuck within us. And so that young person reaches adulthood, and they, let's say they're a teenager, and they lose their boyfriend or girlfriend, teenage love, and then they feel that same feeling. They recognize it, that feeling of abandonment, like that baby or that young person that lost, or that seemingly lost their parents, And then it can happen again and again. The person grows into adulthood, and then they get divorced, and they have that same feeling. And on and on. And if we don't get a chance to look at these things, to actually call them up and allow them to flower and actually see them for what they are and to investigate them, they can stay with us for our entire lives. And so meditation offers, among other practices, meditation gives us that opportunity to see these things. In meditation, basically, among other things, but what we all notice is that we become very sensitive to situations and experiences, feelings, mind states, all these different things. And so that sensitivity gives us an opportunity to actually see these things. Our awareness will land on something, and if we're sensitive to it, we can investigate it and look at it. So meditation isn't necessarily a time to be doing this investigation, but it is a time for allowing our awareness to land on these different things and see what is happening. So we don't want to go into a subject or an emotion or a thought. We don't want to go in there and tear it apart and start investigating, like a private investigator in our meditation practice. But what we can do is see it and take note, and possibly look at it a little bit deeper later on. But if it comes up again and again and again in our meditation, that means that it's something that is definitely suppressed within us, at least for the time being. And it could be something that's been suppressed for many, many years, and something that we owe it to ourselves to take a look at. And so meditation can be very healing, from that standpoint. Generally, what we want to do in meditation is hopefully forget about the past and the future. That's like what I consider like the working mind in a way, or the mind that is kind of dissecting things and actually the part of the mind that gets us into trouble. Why didn't this work out in the past, or how can this be better in the future? Fixing these things and looking at these things that went wrong. And there's the other aspect of the mind where we feel more complete, where these things actually they do rise out of nothing and fall back into nothing. These thoughts and these ideas, and much of that is the subconscious mind that is working with instinct and intuition. That's very natural. And these different aspects of mind. We not trying to change or stop anything in meditation, not trying to block it. And ideally, we want to be able to sit in meditation and say nothing has to change in this moment for everything to be just the way it should be. Nothing has to be different. And that can mean forgetting, not relying on the past or the future, and coming into this present moment, or this presence, this stillness of mind. And if we can rest in that, then we're having a pretty good meditation, because that gives us an opportunity to see our true nature, who we really are, beyond that discursive thinking. Not that thinking is bad, and again, we're not trying to stop it or change it or anything like that. It's just like we're trying to just let it simmer down a little bit in our meditation practice. And we can rest in that presence. Like I said, that's very close to our true nature, if not our true nature for what it is. And are really a part of who we are beyond the mind and beyond the body. And meditation allows us to get a taste of that again and again. So if we have a thought or experience or something comes up and it doesn't seemingly just flow by, we can ask ourselves why that is. And is it happening a lot? Is it a habitual thing? And then we can see these things get stuck. That's the attachment that the Buddha talked about. Anything sticky, we want to really look out for. And like I said, we might have to take a mental note of it and take a good hard look at it later on, maybe. But meditation allows us to see these things. We want to see things and then investigate them, eventually accept it, and then let it go. If we do that again and again and again and again, and we'll notice the liberation, that happens for us, the freedom. If some of you are newer to meditation, I used to ask a group like this, who's new? And then people would kind of go like that. But if you're newer to meditation, just simply listening to the guiding aspect of the practice. The guiding, especially nowadays, it seems like there's the silent meditation and then the guided meditation, especially with the apps on the phone, a lot of guiding on the apps and stuff. So, so my technique of facilitating something like this is to do about 15 minutes of guiding, and then the rest of it will be silent. I think the silence is very, very important. And it's usually pretty easy in a room like this with, the energy is a little bit different, rather than sitting at home in silence. It can be a little bit tougher, for some people. But it's something that everybody can get used to and should get used to. So we'll start our meditation here in a moment, and then afterwards, actually use the clock, and at 8 o'clock we will stop and then see if there's any questions or anything that we want to share, and we'll be done by 8:30. Gently close the eyes if you like. Some people do meditate with their eyes open. There's nothing wrong with that. Some people would agree that meditating with the eyes closed allows us to go in a little bit easier, a little bit deeper in a way. Meditation is said to be the practice of going within. And we're going within the mind-body apparatus, we could call it. Some people tune more into the body, and some people experience the mind, the area of thoughts and mind states, these types of things. And so it's interesting to think that we can watch, we can be the thinker and we can watch the reactions of how we react to thoughts. Like there's a watcher of the thinker. So there's also all of a sudden two of us that is doing this. And we can experience the body. We can feel as if we are the one that has the body, but we can also feel as if we're the one that's watching this experience of the body. If somebody is fairly new to meditation, the idea is generally to kind of expand upon the meditation object. That means to make it broader, to make it bigger. And so sometimes we might hear somebody mention focusing on the breath. They might also mention counting the breath. So for somebody with a very busy mind, or that had a very busy day and having trouble settling in or settling down, they might choose to count the breaths. Breathe in for 1, exhale. Breathe in for 2, exhale, and on, maybe all the way up to 100, depending on what a person wants to do with it. You can also use the breath to breathe through areas of the body that we wish to relax. You can try this by just bringing your awareness to the shoulders, and every time you exhale, use that exhalation to relax the shoulders. Feel how calm and still you can get the shoulders as far as the relaxation of the muscles, the structure. And you can, of course, do this with any area of the body. You can do what is called a body scan. Do this with the entire body, working at the top, working down, or starting at the feet and working up. You can do a body sweep with the breath, completely relaxing the entire body every time you exhale, not manipulating the breath or changing it or anything, just allowing it to be very natural, and every time you exhale, use the relaxation of that exhalation to relax. Some people might use the breath simply by focusing on some area of it where they feel the breath touching the body, like the movement of the air or the movement of the body itself. Probably the most common way of using the breath in meditation is simply focusing on where the breath meets the body at the tip of the nose, or someplace between the tip of the nose and the upper lip, and just focusing on that area right there. And so whatever we focus on, whatever we're using, the object is to become relaxed, become still in the body and the mind, and to bring our attention into this presence. We're giving ourselves permission to set aside any kind of restlessness or worry, any kind of negativity. If there's anger, we notice that is contained in the past. Ill will, anger towards ourselves, also contained in the past. If there's any kind of fear or anything related to fear, like a phobia or some anxiety that's related to fright, it's contained in the future, looking at what might happen and causing fear for us. And so all these things are created by the mind. And most of these things are accessible easily because of these suppressed feelings of the past that we've had. Again, when something arises from nothing and falls back into nothing, it's a very natural occurrence. But when it arises from nothing and seems to get stuck, within the body or within the mind, and then it's something that we start to relate with, we notice it. We carry it around. Sometimes we don't even know it's there. For the most part, we don't. So when we recall something from the past, a traumatic moment, if anger or fear or something comes up, we just let it be, let it flower. Just notice it. Be aware of it. And if it happens in our meditation, same thing. We have to allow these things to come up in order for us to be able to work with them. And the work is done usually by awareness alone. Just simply being aware. And in that awareness is taking a look. And so we might have a mixture of all of this in the meditation practice, and likely we do. We're very peaceful, very present, and then there might be a thought or a memory, something that comes up, something that is triggered perhaps from a sound, or something that's said. And then we notice this energeticness within the body, this energy. It arises, we experience it, our awareness lands on it, we acknowledge it, and we can come back to the breath. And again, coming back to the breath could be different for each of us. And so find the piece of the breath or your meditation object that works for you. Become very familiar with it. And know that it's a friend, something that you can come back to again and again. Because in our meditation practice, that's generally what happens. Very natural. May each one of us and all beings be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to us. May no difficulties come to us. May we all meet with spiritual and worldly success. And may we have the patience, the courage, and the understanding to meet and overcome any problems or any difficulties that we might face in life. Thank you. I hope everybody had a nice meditation. So I hope everybody understood what I was talking about as far as suppressing, these experiences and feelings and thoughts and all these things that come up. There's different ways to look at that, and they don't have to be, depending on our belief, if they don't have to be things that are suppressed within this lifetime either. If we believe in past lives, then we believe in future lives. And so a lot of these suppressed things can come from past, from past lives. Not an individual, like not our lives, but any life. And what I mean by that is teachings of non-self, that there's no individual actually that goes from one life to another. And so these suppressed emotions and feelings and all this stuff, Sigmund Freud called it the subconscious. Subconscious is the body. Everything that's stored within the subconscious is stored within every cell of the body. And when we talk about past lives and this life and future lives, the suppressed things, we're also talking about karma. So they both coincide. And so the Buddha and Sigmund Freud would probably be shaking hands. Yeah, good job, because they're both basically talking about the same thing. And there's a practice called timeline therapy that maybe some of you have heard about. It's a kind of it doesn't have to be a deep trance or anything, but sometimes it's related to hypnotherapy, where a person has a traumatic moment that happened in their life, and the person working with them will have them remember that, and it's a part of their timeline, from the time they were born, or maybe their first memory, and this timeline would go from the first memory into maybe here, and then of course if we want to continue it, that'd be our future timeline like this. And so if we're here and there's something that happened in our past, the facilitator would take them back, kind of float them over the top of the timeline, and have them kind of land into that traumatic moment, and actually ideally have them go a little bit before it, and have them recall that. And in doing so, there's that healing element right there, because we realize that all these conditions had that happen. It wasn't just something that we did or we said or somebody else did or said or whatever. It was just many, many, many conditions coming together for that to happen at that moment, and it'll never happen again at that same way. And it can be very healing in seeing that, because we see that that the doership behind that is not as plentiful as we thought it would be. It's not there the way that we envisioned it. Like, we did this, or this happened to me. Why did that? On and on and on. About all these different impactful things that have happened in the past. And so we can be the witness of that by doing this timeline therapy. But the timeline is actually a very much our functional thought patterns. The time is just a construct. The only thing that's really happening is this right now. So when we think of the timeline, the past and the future, this is very functional thinking. This is the kind of thinking that I've mentioned that comes out of nothing and falls back into nothing. But these areas in that timeline where we have these moments, these traumatic moments, these things that get suppressed are Usually thoughts that have to do with preference. We want things to be a certain way. We want things to be resolved a certain way. They could be a part of blame or pride, pointing our finger at somebody else or at ourselves for this thing happening. But it's I don't want to say a dysfunctional thought, but it's a thought or an activity or an experience that, like I said, is based on preference, but it's very much it's a linear part, linear area in our timeline that does not come out of nothing and then fall back into nothing, and that's the things that get suppressed within us. So it's a very interesting way to look at them. And so we can, if we look at a timeline and fill out a timeline, we can see these tick, 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 these little things that happen in our life, these things that we remember. And they could be happy moments too, but many of them are difficulties that we ran into. And so it's all related to spirituality. It's all related to psychology in many ways, but it can be very, very useful information for us to look at. At this point, anybody have any questions? It can be questions about your practice, about meditation, about anything that I mentioned here. Anything that's coming up, anything at all. I mean, we want this to be open for anybody to say anything that they want to say. Yeah, please.
So, I feel like I always have to move around when I'm meditating, like I can't sit in one spot. Is that normal for like new people like me? I'm not like an avid meditator, but like, is that supposed to change, or is that just how I am, or what would you say about that? Like,
you said your body feels like moving around, or you want to move around?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I can't, like, I get comfortable roaming for a moment and then I have to switch, unless I'm leaving.
Yeah. That's mainly the habit of the body. I mean, even when we're sleeping, we're moving around a lot. Are you do you notice when you sleep, do you roll over and switch sides and all that stuff?
I think I've been known to be like a movie sleeper.
Yeah.
Well, now I have a baby, so I've learned to sleep but not roll over on it. I swear, I've always been a roller, but I don't anymore. But I was before I had kids.
Yeah, it's just a habit, really. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think everybody's probably in that situation when they first start meditating, they feel restlessness in the body. And that's one of the hindrances. There's 5 hindrances in the Buddha, bless his heart, he mentioned 5 hindrances that hinder our happiness, but they also hinder our meditation practice. And one of them is restlessness and worry, and that restlessness could be, mental or physical. And I think everybody experiences that when they first start sitting, restlessness. Sometimes my body feels more restless than others. Sometimes I feel like I can sit for hours, and and I do, but sometimes it's usually connected with the mind too. Like if there's a lot going on up here, the body wants to join the party, so to speak. For that reason, a lot of people enjoy walking meditation too, as much as sitting meditation. When we do retreats here, we got one coming up in August 11th, maybe?
Sounds right.
Is that right?
Sounds right.
Wow. But we alternate between sitting and walking, and a lot of people really like the walking when it's not too hot out, and so we sit for about 35 minutes, and then we walk for about 20 minutes, alternate between the two. And it's like some people love sitting or love walking meditation, and some people, not so much. It's funny.
It gets better with practice.
What's that?
So it gets better with practice. If you have
Oh, yeah, for
consistent
sure.
practice, even if it's for 10 minutes, your body can get used to that, you know.
Yeah.
I was like that too. I was really restless when I first started. My body wouldn't. But with practice, consistent practice is key.
Yeah, consistency is really important. Just do it every day, and then it's like the opposite side of that. A lot of people don't realize the opposite side of that is the sloth and torpor, where we get sleepy, and the body, wants to sleep. The mind wants to sleep, and it's the same thing because we're not used to that. We close our eyes, and then the biological function of the body says, well, it's time to sleep, because our eyes are closed and we're kind of in a quiet place. And if we're not used to meditating, it'll say, time to sleep, and then we'll want to go off to sleep. But if we meditate consistently a little bit every day, the biological function, changes, and it says, well, this is not sleep, and it's not necessarily fully awake, but it's something different called meditation. So, it all happens from practice. And I suppose as a meditation instructor, that's probably the biggest thing that you have to get out to people, is to do it every day. Whether it's even 10 minutes, doesn't have to be like a 40-minute practice or anything, but just to do it every day. I was talking to somebody yesterday about Transcendental Meditation. Most people know what that is. The Beatles. The Beatles made it fairly popular, back in the day. But it's very, it's still very popular. A lot of the elite people out there doing the practice, but they ask their practitioners to practice, 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes at night. And if they do that, it works wonders. But any meditation practice will, if you do it twice a day, 20 minutes, 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes at night, just do it, what we could say religiously, it works. Then you lose that restlessness, or that sloth and torpor. The sloth and torpor is another one of the hindrances with restlessness and worry. And then there's three more, and then these are also a part of, they are a part of that horizontal thought pattern, the getting these emotions and feelings getting stuck within the body. Like desire is another one of the hindrances. If we have a desire for things to be different, or a desire for something, and in other words, if that feeling of desire doesn't come up and then go back down, come from nothing and go back into nothing, then it'll pull us. It's got that pulling effect. It's like, here's your desire, or here's your addiction, that kind of thing. If it would rise and fall, it wouldn't, we would just wait it out for just a little bit and it would be done. But these desires that are a problem are these things that come up, and then they get suppressed within us. We feel like it's our identity, part of us, because in a way it is. So we have to work with these things. That's the third hindrance. The other hindrance is what's called aversion, or we could call it ill will, or even anger or hatred. The feelings of how these things are stored within the body, but also from the function of the timeline, there's something that happened in the past. We're angry at something that we did or somebody else did, or and then there's triggers that come up that usually they're traffic related for some reason. Something will come up and we'll go, oh, I hate that when they do that. I'm a blinker guy. I like it when people use their blinkers. It's like, how come he doesn't? Oh, that poor guy, new car, his blinkers don't work. Poor guy. Go on and on like that. And then there's one more. There's one more hindrance.
Trying to.
Doubt.
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 Yeah.
Yeah. Doubt is the other one. And doubt in our abilities, doubt in somebody else's abilities. I always say doubt can derail a freight train, because if we have doubt, we won't even be here. So we can all pat ourselves on the back and say that we took care of most of that doubt. But we can have doubt in meditation, like restlessness in the body. Here I am meditating, and I want to move. I don't want to sit here, and that can kind of raise a little form of doubt. Like, am I doing this right? Man, I remember when I started meditating, it was like, I can't be doing this right. I had no teacher or anything like that. I thought, this just doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't feel right. I'm doing something wrong, I wonder if I am, it's questioning, and there was some doubt there, but I did it consistently. I did it every day, even at the very beginning. So the 5 hindrances, from Theravada Buddhism are very nice to remember. Yeah.
So I have an honest question too. This is my second time here, so it still feels really new to me. But my thing is, I listened to what you said in the beginning, and I thought, okay, if anything comes, then I'll try to gently explore that and look at the depth of that, right? So that was my intention. And then you said, to try to count your breaths too, that would help. And then you said start around 100, and I thought, I'm going to start at 200 and count down.
Okay.
But at about 175, I took it down to 75 because I was just not getting anywhere. I had so many things, random, and I couldn't even make sense of them. I was even distracted, like, what is that? What? Because I even had images coming into my head that I couldn't really connect to anything, but they're distracting. So I gently tried to count again, and I think we were halfway through, and I was like at 180. So, and I still didn't finish, but that was my way of trying to, I guess, just gently bring me back to breath.
Mm-hmm.
And how long does it take for me to be able to just clear my mind?
It's different. It's different. Yeah, a lot. Some people will notice a difference right, within the first week of practice and things like that. But it's more of a noticing than anything else. You're noticing how active the mind is, and it's probably been like that all day, and it's maybe for all your life. It's been that active. Are you fairly new meditator?
It was my second time, and I'm
Okay.
just on a year.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Well, you're doing everything right. Counting, I've never heard anybody start at 200 before. That's
Very
when
creative.
I have problems sleeping,
yeah,
I'm more able to control my count when
Yeah.
I do it backwards.
yeah,
And so I go through it like that, and then I start over, and I thought, oh, okay, I'll just go through 200 like this. But because I was, in a pose, and I was aware of my breathing, I was going so slow because I had so many thoughts, and then I was trying to just kind of get my mind. It was really weird. I was almost feeling like I had to wait for a break in between the thoughts and the images to kind of just like, oh, okay, 35.
yeah,
And then, so it took me a long time to get to 25 actually, because
Yeah.
I went to 75. And so, but it was very distracting, and towards the end, I started feeling I'm not gaining anything, or am I? I don't know, I guess,
yeah.
because it didn't ease.
Yeah, well, yeah, you are, and it's called a practice because that's what it is, and eventually you'll notice a difference. I'm sure you will, and especially from where you're coming from, I've heard other people express almost the identical thing, and that kind of mind, that kind of active mind like that, you're likely to notice more of an improvement than somebody that can't express that kind of thing. I mean, I can almost guarantee that if you practiced every day, I very seldom tell anybody how long they should practice, but if you would apply yourself every day and maybe set a timer for, maybe 15 minutes, and, preferably twice a day, but once a day would be fine. You would notice that you'd become very, very accustomed to all that activity, and it would fall into the background. And then you would be able to rest in peace of mind is really what we're looking for. And I call it presence. I use that word presence here several times tonight. And it is a part of that peace of mind. But there's nothing wrong with the thoughts. If we feel as if we should get rid of them, then they'll really bother us a lot. But if we just let that energy happen, that's all it is energy. And most of those thoughts, or maybe all of them actually, are probably, tell me if I'm wrong, but they're coming from nothing and they're falling away to nothing.
Yes, I was like, what? When I hear sounds, images, and thoughts, and so it was very distracting because I'm trying to figure out, because you said it could be something that's coming up from the past, something, so I'm trying to figure it out. And I just the meditation is not really a time for self-psychotherapy or trying to figure things out. I guess I misunderstood.
We're not trying to analyze things. We're just letting them be, really.
Yeah.
And the analogy of, and most of us have probably heard this, but sitting on the river's edge, and let's say you're sitting next to a stream or a river, and the water's flowing by, and there's bubbles in there, and there's twigs in there, all these different things, and those are representative of our thoughts, our emotions, and all these different things that are, bubbling up, in our minds. But we're just letting them go in that stream. We're not going to jump in that stream and try to change the bubbles or try to repair anything. We're just going to let everything flow by. And that's again the analogy for coming up from nothing and falling away from nothing. And just let it be. Yeah, let it be. Because if we consider meditation, like I said earlier, and say that this is it, nothing has to change. Nothing has to change for this moment to be any better. That's really what we're looking for. And because it's like that all the time for us. We just don't. We have difficulty picking up on that, but when our awareness lands on that idea that this is it,
And it's okay.
Yeah, everything's okay. It's always okay. Everything's always okay.
We do see the patterns after a while, though. We don't have to really strive to look for it. After you're meditating for a little while, you do start to connect and realize, oh yeah, my mind tends to go here. You don't have to do it while you're meditating, but you do realize it after a while.
Yeah, there's patterns of the mind.
And
The
it is-
hindrances.
But it doesn't bother us. I mean, it's just a...
And it is please.
But it's helpful. But it becomes helpful to realize what your hindrances are, and it happens in time. It's nothing you have to push for in the beginning, is what I'm saying.
Yep, makes sense, yeah.
And just be kind to yourself. Because don't be like too hard on yourself. Say, oh, I didn't do this right, I didn't do that right.
Yeah, you did it.
Right.
Just be kind to yourself.
I'm not exactly sure what to expect, so I thought, I don't know, I was
Yeah.
just thinking,
Yeah, you
I would
do-
think less, I guess.
You're doing everything right.
Yeah.
You're doing everything right, yeah. You just-
Yeah, that's what it is.
I think maybe that was key. I was,
Expectation.
I had these other things and in my mind expecting to explore things that came from the past, but you're right, I can just not have none of that.
Yeah. Sometimes maybe what I said can be confusing for people too. You know, at the beginning of the meditation, I have to be careful not to think that, you know, we should be analyzing things or looking at things in a certain way. Just trying to be as natural as possible. Meditation is really a reflection of our world that's happening, and it's an amplified reflection in a way. So it's like like I said, we become sensitive to all this, and then we see it for what it is. And it's like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? You know, but it's likely something that's been happening all day long and all week and all your life, you know, for the most part, which is fine. But you know, meditation is a training ground, you know, for all that. And it gives us an opportunity to see it more clearly and to not take it so seriously. Thank you all for coming tonight, and let's do it again next Wednesday. Thank you.